morning glory. Say there, stop that yawning. A brand new day is dawning. Pull up the shade and let the sun come through. Good morning glory. Spend about an hour underneath the shower and keep on singing like the birdies do.
Welcome to New Book Tuesday. No, I'm joking. Welcome to... It's Books of the Week on CPL Radio, our Facebook stream. Steve and I were just talking off camera, and he was plotting my demise again, which is a norm. And when I say the word Steve, I mean, of course, our book critic in Boston, Massachusetts, Steve Donahue, waiting at his post, glaring, giving me that look.
I thought I was plotting your demise until you brought up those floozies you two-timed me with.
You mean this one, Steve?
Whoa!
You know, I live to hear Steve when he says, and then she removed her bonnet. Because as you all know, all you wonderful viewers know that Steve and I where is it? Here it is. Whoop, one more time. We're Team Bratwurst here on this show. And we also talk about books sometimes too on this delightful show. And Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm fine. I don't think our viewers and listeners realize the heroic struggles that happen behind scenes here. Any of you who've ever done any kind of audio or visual production will know that you chat and you banter, and then there's a moment where the guest and the producer say, okay, meaning we're going to pull this together and we're going to put on a game face. And if any of you had any idea the lift that was this time, the lift that is every time, it's like the president's brains splatter all over Mrs. Lincoln, and then she's supposed to say, okay.
Coming to you
We're
live.
We're going to try to give you a show anyway.
Coming to you live from the Ford's Theater.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
Aside from that, Mrs. Lincoln, how do you like Books of the Week?
Well, there we go. So what we do on this show traditionally is we work our way through a nonfiction title of the week, usually a new release, a new arrival, and then a fiction title, both of Steve's choosing normally, and then a wild card thing, although using the word wild card on this show is becoming increasingly moot because this whole thing is kind of a wild card. We decided to do a special show today, a show that will invigorate your reading. Don't believe that for a minute, do I? And we are going to give you maybe a little list of classics. That's right, classics. The thing that your mother and your teacher and your clergy say you should read more classics. And there's a lot of weird classic guilt, isn't there, Steve?
There is indeed. Yes, I was going to add to that list. Your guilty conscience will often tell you that.
There's that too.
Well, and I think there's a good reason for that. I think a lot of readers are introduced to these things in school. They don't want to read them. They're being told you have to do 130 pages for next week. They drag their heels. They don't like it. They don't like the assignment at all. They've never heard of the thing. Of course, the teacher's not giving them any context as to what it is or why it's interesting. And yet, how many students still feel a pull? I mean, these things are immortal for a reason. They'll work on you even with no context and crappy teachers. Even if you're against it, even if you don't want it to happen, they'll still be against it because kids are kids. But maybe 10 years later, they're thinking, I did feel something.
Yeah.
Something in that book pulled at me.
Absolutely.
And that is classic guilt.
Yes. My children are working their way through Animal Farm this week at their high school, and they admitted to me they liked it. So there we go. So it still works. I brought 5 titles with me today, and we will work our way through them as best we can. Guilt-free, judgment-free. No, that's not true.
The one worry is, what if you hold up a classic I haven't read?
Moving on. What's amazing is that Steve is quite beloved for his reading prowess by far and wide, but he's also beloved for other reasons too.
I'm afraid when you're dealing with the curse of the iris, it's more like finger sausage.
All right, little Smokey, let's get to work. Didn't think we'd go there. Let's start with an easy one. I wanted to actually.
What happens if you pick a classic that I haven't read? Oh, that's right. You're not co-hosting with another critic. Instead, you're talking to one critic. Anyway, I don't want to chomp on my own sausage. Just move forward. That's all. I just thought I would add that as a parenthetical. But on this show, you don't have to worry about that. Whereas in all other shows that you produce.
For those who are new to our show and may not know Steve Donahue's MO, which would be surprising, but he actually has read everything. You say, oh, yeah, right. And it's just like, no, actually, I believe he has read everything.
I'm the first to admit I haven't read everything. But usually when a critic says they've read everything, it means they've read all the Wapshot Chronicles of John Updike. And that's it.
Right. No, Steve has read that pamphlet called Famous Jewish Sports Legends. He's even read that. It took him 2.5 minutes. Anyway,
you were gone last week. Should we apologize to our viewers? You failed us once again. We had a clip show last week.
Well, I had to reload.
Yeah. I'm assuming that it was because you were having a sit down with Wisconsin's finest about sending a salacious postcard to Adrienne Barbeau.
No, Adrienne Barbeau. I didn't think she'd make it on this day's show.
No one is safe. But when are you going to realize she's just not that into you?
When she signed my copy of Swamp Thing, I knew there was something there.
No, you were just another pimply-faced kid in line at the convention. She doesn't remember you. If you would stop with the postcards, we might not have to run clip shows.
The fog is in 1080p, and I can see her better than she can see herself right now, okay? Now that we talked about Adrienne Barbeau, let's talk about someone on par with Adrienne Barbeau. That would be, of course, Yukio Mishima. And this is a very old copy of book 2 of, I believe, a 4-book run. This is Runaway Horses. This is a very old book we have upstairs in our fiction section. We don't have the other ones, so there's not much you can. I don't know if this is a good place to start. Steve, what are your thoughts on this gentleman who checked out a little early? Actually,
it's very odd that it would be there in the library. Are you saying you have no other books by Mishima? Just that one.
We did it one time. Someone, a prior librarian, weeded them.
But okay, why would that prior librarian weed all but one?
You're asking the wrong question, Steve. We're as confused as anybody. Yes, I don't know, but here it is. This is the last remaining volume. We had the entire set in this wonderful.
That's the original American hardcover.
Yeah, the aged edition here, but the entire Sea of Fertility cycle. And this is book 2. And let me ask you this then. Should I actively get the others back? I mean, I was about the fact that this is dangling out there like a loose tooth.
Yes, it's right now. It's dangling out there like a lonely sausage.
Yes, there are no lonely sausages, Steve. I find the smile helps.
No, Mishima is a master. He's a modern master. You should definitely have. I mean, Runaway Horses wouldn't be even in my top 2 or 3 to have. You should definitely get the others.
Yeah.
I wonder though that this opens up questions that I have for you. If you are, I mean, you're the guy at the switch, right, for this sort of order. So you look at your shelves and you see that you have one old hardcover of Mishima, and you want to get others. Well, Mishima doesn't exist in America in hardcover right now. So what do you do?
I will get there. They believe they are still available in paperback form, so it won't be particularly aesthetically pleasing on our shelves, but at least they'll be available and readable. But I did look into it this morning, actually, knowing I was bringing this down and knowing you might have a question like that.
There are a bunch of trade paperbacks that are available. Not everything, though. I don't think all of his stuff is available in trade paperback anymore. And I think, disgracefully, that a large amount of his stuff is no longer in print in America. But he's worth reading.
They called him in my travels, I saw they called him sort of the soul of Japan. Before and the entire series seems to the Sea of Fertility seems to be a lament of westernization. Is that accurate? Somewhat. Okay.
Yeah, but with really good characters. The only reason I sound reserved here is because your patrons really ought to read about Mishima too. He led a fascinating life. It's worth reading about. Unlike a lot of authors, it's worth reading about.
Sure.
But what a weird thing for your patrons to encounter. They go on the shelf. Maybe they listen to a podcast, a good podcast about him.
They're out there, I hear.
I hear they're out there. Adrienne Barbeau listens to them all the time.
I'm so glad I'm so glad she's showing up all over this show today.
Yes, but enough with the postcards.
She claimed to like the first 60.
No, she didn't. No, she didn't. When you tell the cops at the door she liked the first 60, I can prove it to you. You show them postcards, and those postcards are blank. When are you going to realize that? That's when the cops look at each other with that awkward face.
So since we're talking about Miss Barbeau, and I'm getting a little under the collar, a little schwitzy,
getting a little fogged up.
Yeah, my glasses are. I thought we moved into maybe some sultrier material, which we've been known to do on this show. We already did this morning, I think. But anyway, nonetheless, I have Lolita from Vladimir Nabokov.
And you got it in that particular hardcover.
Yeah, is that Everyman, I believe? Yeah, Everyman's library. Yeah,
they look delightful. The Everymans are really solidly built. Wonderful binding, wonderful cloth bookmark. Here, wasted on a giant piece of putrid crap.
Oh yes,
it's an absolute garbage book. And before our handful of dogged listeners jump right in and say, "Oh, he's just being a prude," if we could get over that for just a minute. For the last 275 years, anytime anyone has ever said that Lolita is a crappy book, the immediate response has been, "Oh, you're just a prude." No, not at all. If I handed you a weather-beaten, extremely dog-eared copy of Debbie Does Detroit, taken from, I don't know, my producer's room, and I handed it to you, and you read the first 20 pages and said, "Oh, this is terrible," I would not come back by saying, "Oh, you're just a prude." I would entertain instead the idea that it's probably true. Mm-hmm. And it's true in this case. There was a critic once, blessed be his name, who said of Virgil, the Roman poet Virgil, the author of the Aeneid, this critic said, "Take away his style, and what's left?" And people howled in his day. They howled. And I think they largely howled because they saw what he was trying to say. Take away the style of Homer, and a lot is left. Take away the style of Virgil, well. And I say the same thing, not to equate them in any way, except they were both jerks who died owing me money. I say the same thing about Nabokov. I say the same thing about Lolita. Take away the stupid verbal fireworks and also the salacious material. What is there? Are there characters? No. Is there any kind of plot or progression of any kind? No, there isn't. This is somebody trying to fall foul of the censors because he knows publicity, and it worked.
And what are your feelings on the Kubrick adaptation of this? Come on. I'm like Michael Keaton at the Oscars. Come on.
Let's just say, I think the Kubrick adaptation showed a lot of simpatico between the main character and the director. Let's just say that. After all, this is a sausage-friendly channel.
So much. Yes. Interesting.
Your patrons have heard about this book, and they should ignore it.
They don't, though.
No.
Well circulated and goes out of our classics. I would say this goes out in the top 10% of classics that move. Only because I'm sure they've heard from someone, probably some of the people you were describing earlier, who said, "Oh, it's wonderful. It's a great satire." I mean, that's I think what's being thrown around.
And I suppose that if I ask you to email me a list of the names of the people who borrowed the book, you're going to hit me with the First Amendment, all this First Amendment stuff that you're always talking about.
It's the library version of the HIPAA Act. I can't do that, sir. But
I just want to send them salacious postcards. That's all.
I have a few at home I haven't sent yet. I'll send them your way. Oh my. Well, let's get out of that gutter and head on over to a most beloved book, and I would say easily probably our top 1 or 2 most circed classic now. It is out of the Agatha Christie collection, lovely leather-bound thing, and of course, it is the most obvious one, Murder on the Orient Express.
You're kidding me. Are you saying that Agatha Christie does well in the libraries?
Oh my gosh.
In 2024.
I had to buy new copies of the Murder of Roger Ackroyd and The Affair at Styles this year because both were shredded. They were like guitar picks. There's nothing left.
Well, of course, what can I say about Murder on the Orient Express? It's fantastic. I absolutely love it. It's Christie at the peak of her form. It was, of course, made into a very famous movie.
Yeah,
starring Albert Finney and literally everyone else in the Screen Actors Guild.
The whole SAG was showed up, yes.
And then 50 years later, it was desecrated by Kenneth Branagh.
Which is, I think, why it's moving as much now, certainly.
It was made into another movie version with Kenneth Branagh playing Hercule Poirot, the little Belgian detective who's very precise and very prim and very trim, and who exercises these little gray cells to solve murder mysteries, and who in Kenneth Branagh's movie has a handlebar mustache out like this. A handlebar mustache out like this.
A big furry banana on his face.
Right. So you're watching the movie, and all you're thinking about is the mustache. Literally. You're not thinking about anything else. You're not thinking about the different passengers on the train. You're not thinking about the different stories and whether or not they interconnect. You're not thinking about the humor that Christie injects into the book and that is very much alive in the original version. Instead, you're trapped in that scene from Austin Powers where he's talking with a guy who has a mole, and all he can think about is mole, 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 mole. That's all he can think about. The character has to say, I'm aware of the irony that I am a mole, and yet I also have a mole. And Austin Powers has to say, I didn't notice that. The mole at one point actually speaks. It has a little mouth, and it speaks. And that's all I could think about when I was watching that Kenneth Branagh train wreck, no pun intended, was that's the only thing you think about. Is the mustache.
Little did you know that the mustache actually is in the Screen Actors Guild too. So as a card-carrying member, yes. What's great about Austin Powers too, that's my number 2 favorite joke. Number 1, of course, is the fact that there's someone named Basil Exposition who gets you up to speed. But anyway,
the movie presented me with a huge temptation in small-town Midwest because this was at a time when no one had TVs, no one had VCRs, there was no internet. And so you would have lines outside a popular movie. People would be waiting in line.
Sure. Yes.
And it was the easiest thing in the world if you were driving or bicycling by that line to shout out one single sentence that would ruin the movie. You could ruin Murder on the Orient Express in one sentence.
No.
You don't have to go, and then he cuts off Lieutenant, and then you never do anything like that. You can just yell one sentence and you'll ruin the movie. And that was an awful temptation.
Steve on his bike chewing on his wrist as he's going by to not. Yes. So the book, absolutely worth,
wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Christie, at times in her career, does occasionally phone in a novel.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are a little bit... they'll grate against 21st century sensibilities.
Mm-hmm.
She was very much a writer of her time. She is very much ripe for the blue-haired, blue checkmark Twitter censors to descend on her books and fix them. She's very much ripe for that. And you're going to encounter that. Yeah. You're going to encounter that not only out of the mouths of the characters, but out of the authorial voice as well. Certainly. Also the racial, especially the sexual, also the class crudities. Some of that in those books you absolutely cannot lay at anyone's feet other than Christie herself.
Sure.
But the books are so good. They're so enjoyable anyway. That's what the mistake that we make by allowing people who don't read anyway to alter all these books that are so good.
Is that movement still chugging on, or have they?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Great. Yeah, it is. And I want to point out here, we don't need to turn this into a political rant, but I want to point out the creatures with the blue hairs and the blue check marks on Twitter that are doing this movement, that are pushing, hey, this book is no longer acceptable. And if you don't agree with that, we'll have your tenure revoked and we'll get our hench people to firebomb your house. They, believe it or not, are not the villains. The villains are your fellow librarians walking the shelves and saying, all right, this one has to go, that one has to go, instead of saying, do it and I'll quit.
I have groceries to buy, Steve.
So did the woman in Iowa who was the subject of a New Yorker profile a year ago. She also mentioned that she has groceries to buy. And so these 100 books I'm going to pull from my shelves because people said they don't like them.
Yeah. We here at the Cedarburg Public Library have a wonderful system in place, actually, wherein someone has to fill out paperwork if they'd like to challenge a book. Already they start wringing their hands together and they're like, paperwork. And that because they thought they could just come in and we would grab it and walk it with them to the dumpster. That's what they were hoping for. So there's paperwork to file, and then the library board gets involved, and they will talk about it, and they will mostly demand that those who are challenging the book have read it.
And that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
You know, when I've brought this subject up, I have occasionally stem-winded on this subject in the past. I know that will shock you. People have responded right away by saying, well, people have bills to pay, just like you did.
Yes.
And I always want to say the way to do it is bury it in bureaucracy. If there's one thing libraries know how to do, it's that. So bury it in bureaucracy. The person who's objecting today is going to be on to a new victim next week.
Oh, absolutely. What's great, too, is that we are a branch of municipal government. We know how to bury. Let me tell you, you will you'll be gasping for air. You're going to look for your snorkel by the time we're done with you.
It's a bunch of fake, outraged, Twitter brainwashed parents come into your library and say, we want this book removed from the shelf. Say, all right, well, the first step is to draft a memorandum toward the idea of collecting enough signatures to form a blue ribbon committee to study the issue. It'll be 15 years before anything even happens.
Absolutely. So, well, they'll all get together and, maybe have a little brat fry. And at that point, they'll forget what the hell they were meeting for in the first place.
Does your library have a lot of Agatha Christie?
We're doing good. Just because this is a mystery library in more ways than one, but our mystery section is robust, and it doesn't matter what era it was written. We have voracious, just starved mystery lovers here, which is for me great. It's fun. We do from our cozy mysteries to Agatha Christie, to everything. Oh yeah. It's great. It's actually and it's fun to have those conversations with people because mystery writers seem to like to talk a lot. So they, and they'll read everything.
Well, when it comes to Agatha Christie, I can echo the critical judgments that she encountered in her own life over and over again. Critics saying, well, it's Christie for Christmas. It's a big combine. It's totally impersonal. And yet the book did work. I did read it. My editor told me to read it, and I did enjoy it. I mean, I couldn't put it down. Over and over again. When you read the criticism of her day over the course of 35 years, you will see the most stuffed shirt New York Times critics all having that reaction. Well, this is obvious trash. Did you see that twist coming? I sure didn't. So I'm glad that she still survives. I'm glad she's still popular.
Survives and thrives. I mean, definitely. Absolutely. So, all right. Well, how wonderful that you all got a little mini Agatha Christie, starter kit, I guess, as they might say.
I'm willing to call myself a fan, even though I want to stress, when you read her books, you are going to encounter things that will strike you like nails on a chalkboard in the 21st century. Sure. And I want to stress since I criticized those blue checkmark people, those censors, I want to stress that is a good thing.
Yeah.
Our social conscience, apart from the weirdos, our social conscience actually has improved.
Yes. Yeah.
Things that we would have just read right past even 40 years ago. We now notice and should notice them.
And and it improved not because things were omitted or eliminated.
Right. It's specifically because they were there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, it's not the discordant material in the Agatha Christie mysteries that's now upsetting our listeners. It's the fact that we're almost agreeing with each other.
All right, everybody, bust out the cake. We are having a grand grand old time. My hot dog cake didn't come in. I'm very sad. Okay, well, normally I'd put the hot dog cake with candles there, but that's gone. I must have eaten it. All right, speaking of eaten, I like this. Here's an Eaton press that I grabbed off the shelf.
You have Eaton press at the library? Won't it get torn to pieces?
Someone expired, left the planet Earth, and left us with his entire Eaton Press collection about 15, 20 years ago, and they're still in great shape. And
really cool books.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our listeners, I assume, know what Eaton Press is. They're a deluxe book reprint firm. They make really solid. Now that I think about it, it does make sense to have them in the library because they'll never fall apart.
Sure. No, absolutely. And this is, and the Eaton Press collection, of course, as Steve said, is lovely and gilded and gorgeous and wonderful. And this is The House of Seven Gables that I grabbed, which I've never read, and I think I should. Wow.
I have, of course, read all of Hawthorne and also dated him.
This just in.
I absolutely love this author, and I firmly believe that The House of the Seven Gables is his best work. I mean, you will know him. If you know him at all, you'll know him from The Scarlet Letter.
Scarlet Letter, yeah.
Because you had it assigned in school. Yeah. House of the Seven Gables, The Scarlet Letter is lush and extremely emotionally manipulative in a very good way. It works really well on that level. But The House of the Seven Gables is everything that Hawthorne wanted to dump into a book. All stirred up to this horrible, dark, gothic pitch. Just wonderful.
Who on a rainy, windswept day wouldn't want to walk around with The House of the Seven Gables under your arm? In this edition, I ask you.
Yeah, it grabs you right from the beginning, which of course you can't say that about The Scarlet Letter. Mm-hmm. It grabs you right from the beginning, and it just builds and builds. I think it's the best thing he ever did. The most passionate thing he ever wrote is a book called The Marble Fawn, which is really, really odd. It's not odd at the beginning, but the more you go into it, the weirder it gets. I always say that The Marble Fawn is the equivalent of Moby Dick for Hawthorne.
Okay.
But House of the Seven Gables is something else again. I don't believe that. I know that this is heresy because The Scarlet Letter is so taught. It's so universally assigned.
Absolutely.
But I don't think it's perfectly controlled. And the House of the Seven Gables is perfectly controlled.
Nice.
It's just so wonderful. And now, is that like Agatha Christie? Does it go out?
Not nearly as much, hence why I grabbed it. Because the copy, I almost grabbed The Scarlet Letter, actually, but I thought, well, how obvious of me. And right next to it, of course, was this. And I thought, let's do this book a service today. And so I'm very excited to. It's my year to crack this open, and you have closed the deal for me. So there we are. I may even do it on my slowly percolating new booktube channel I'm playing with now. I don't know. I threw my hat into Steve's ring, and we'll what's that?
I'm debating how to respond to your booktube channel.
Poorly, I'm sure.
I've noticed something. I don't know what it says about my viewers or perhaps me. That when I roundly excoriate some new channel, it explodes in subscribers. I'm not sure that I like my own subscribers for the way they do that. Or maybe they understand what I mean when I excoriate something.
For those of you who don't know, and Steve's not captive of the political prisoner of the Cedar Brook Public Library, he has a YouTube channel of his own, which has exploded and blossomed to sizes that I'm sure he never thought possible, nor does he seem to welcome.
No. And if the viewers who are listening to this podcast and don't know about my channel, also are mystified that it would be popular at all, because they're listening to me right now and they're saying, why on earth would anyone do this?
I've got bad news for you. You might get more subscribers today, this weekend.
Let's
Sorry.
just hope that you managed to keep Adrienne Barbeau off your channel.
Well, I had her on my channel once, but it got taken down, Steve.
No, you were talking to empty air. This is what we're all trying to tell you. Oh
right,
my God.
You're right. I took the orange pill that day, not the green one.
Go to your house, you say, see all the postcards she sent me? They're all empty, and they all just awkwardly look at each other as you're offering them bratwurst.
So the full-size Adrienne Barbeau poster on my ceiling, that's not really her?
It's not really there. It's not really there. It's a full-size poster of B. Arthur.
Moving
I
on.
believe the last time that Wisconsin's Finest backed their way out of your house looking at each other the whole time, I believe that their camcorders said that when they got back into the car, they said, it's like Jeffrey Dahmer if there weren't any victims.
Oh, dear.
There's no crime being committed, but it sure is creepy.
They deleted their body cam footage, and there was no legal repercussions whatsoever, is what you're saying. Very good. Well, we're going to end on an author that I know.
I know. The whole episode has been, okay. And it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. That'll be our motto. Okay.
Back on the clock.
Right. This show has gone off the rails again. Where are these rail things? We've never seen.
Well, it's about to again, everybody. I have a little reading project besides reading some very old, musty, black molded Star Trek books this summer. I have another reading project that I introduced on my channel. I thought, well, I want to get Steve's take too. And this is a man that I know Steve has nothing but adoration for. And this is God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, one that I enjoyed quite a bit, but this was 22 years ago, and I haven't read it since. So, Kurt Vonnegut, they left off the junior here. I think he's frequently known as Kurt Vonnegut Jr. as well. Beloved by what Steve would call dude bro readers everywhere. Steve, Kurt.
The JR stands for jerk on roids.
I was wondering about that.
Kurt Vonnegut, comma, jerkroid.
All right. Very good. Very good. People love him. I must even.
No, they don't.
They pretend to love him.
They don't. They don't actually love him.
Okay.
Take his fly-blown, horrible, stupid, crapulous tricks, the 4 of them that he has. Take those tricks and the stupid, ripped off, ripped out, horrible, etoliated, crapulous prose. Take all that stuff, pour it out of a Kurt Vonnegut novel, because when his name is on the cover, you're sticking it to Dad. Take it out of his book and pour it into a book with an anonymous author. And just to seal the deal, make the anonymous author a woman. Or as the Dude Bros say, a female.
Yes.
Pour it into a book like that and hand it to any one of them and watch what happens. And if you don't change anything except the packaging on the outside and their reactions to suddenly, see, this is what you get when you let females work in the industry or any industry, then what does that mean?
Right.
If that's the reaction that you get when you hand them the exact same stuff in a different packaging, then what does that mean? It means they didn't actually like it.
That might be true. Well, and if you give one of these Vonnegut fans, which I counted myself as one in my late 20s when I was a card-carrying dude bro.
And the reaction to Vonnegut among his readers is one of two. Either it is young people sticking it to their dads and claiming they like this guy when they would not like the actual content of his book if it were repackaged somewhere else word for word. Or it's people like you who don't like Kurt Vonnegut. They like the idea that they were once in their 20s.
I'm a big fan of that idea. It was great.
And I don't blame you. Who doesn't like the idea that they were once in their 20s? I mean, right now, at this particular moment, given recent events, pretty sure that Adrienne Barbeau is not happy that you were ever in your 20s.
I was twice as voracious back then, Steve.
She was just one pimply-faced kid in a line of pimply-faced kids. How was she to know that the postcards would just keep coming?
I ruined a VCR in my 20s with the Cannonball Run on pause.
You know, our viewers are never going to believe that I pulled her name out of thin air, because you have now named her entire filmography. So I obviously have stumbled upon an actual obsession. It's a little bit awkward.
I mean, she's one of many, but sure. I mean, it's
Kurt Vonnegut stinks. When he was alive, he stank both metaphorically and physically, since he smoked nonstop and never bathed. And his favorite subject was also his favorite writer and his favorite person, and that was himself.
Yes.
An absolutely crapulent, horrible excuse for a human being, and also a terrible writer.
Well, I'm going to find out, because I'm turning those rocks over this summer. I started already with something called Player Piano, which I haven't read since I was 27. I'm about 30 pages in, and I'm already kind of like, oh, what have I done?
Yeah.
It's not.
If you have 30 pages into Player Piano, that means in the paperback version that I read, that means you have about 35 pages to go before you hit the thing, the one gimmick, the one trick. It's stupid. It's the kind of gimmick that occurs to a 6-year-old on a playground. I guarantee you it occurred to Vonnegut on the porch of some relative's house right before he fell asleep and had his ashtray burn the place down. And didn't apologize, and didn't use any of his millions of dollars to buy a new house for the victim, and then almost did the same thing to the second house he was invited to. I guarantee you that when that idea occurred to Vonnegut, he was like, "That's the greatest idea anyone's ever had." You're about 35 pages away from that idea, and you're going to sail right by it when you get to it. On page 70, you're going to sail right by it, and then you're going to think, "Oh wait, was that it?" Oh, yeah, I can tell now. Now that I think about it, I can tell because of how visibly proud you are of that.
He's a weird creature in literature, because he kept a toe in theory in science fiction, but he clearly hates science fiction. I mean, he doesn't have, but and then it looks like they were trying to market him as such, and it wasn't going well in that regard. And so, yeah, it's interesting.
No, you are not a science fiction writer just because you decide to stop telling boob jokes about Illinois and start telling them about Venus.
Well, now,
it doesn't make you a science fiction author.
I love boob jokes about Illinois, so I might do okay here. I mean, that is what I'm saying. I mean, that's a genre. That's a subgenre that I've actually been dabbling in some time.
Are we going to run the banner on this show? Are you a producer looking for a job? We do have the banner, right?
I actually converted that to a paid ad that's on at 2 a.m. here in the greater Milwaukee area. So you too can, yes. Well, that's God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, a book that I remember loving at age 28. We'll see how it goes. Visit my channel.
I would argue that even at age 28, you didn't love it. I would argue that that is true. I would argue that if you were to cast your mind back to the details of when you were 28 and think about, for instance, the science fiction you were reading then, that you actually did love.
Yeah.
I bet you would see a gap, a huge difference. It wasn't that you loved God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. It was that you loved the idea of loving it for the people it would cheese off. Which is quite different from the stuff that you're actually on the back porch reading and loving. I'm tired. I have to work tomorrow, but I cannot stop reading this.
Sure. No, well, you're right.
No one ever will. When they say they love him, they're talking about a whole bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with what's on the page.
It's funny you mentioned that, because as I flash back to that time period, I do remember each book having lengthy bits that I could classify as a slog.
Yeah. I lived through that bit with people when they were reading him in their teens and 20s.
It's interesting. Well, we'll find out.
I saw what I refer to as moving the goalpost. I saw them do it.
Yeah.
I saw their reaction. They're reading Second Foundation, and they're thrilling all the way to the roots of their hair. Now, I might not agree with that reaction in terms of Second Foundation by Isaac Asimov, but I could see that it was a categorical difference between what that and what they were doing. Oh, yeah. Oh, you're getting away with a lot. And I'm vicariously getting away with a lot by reading you get away with a lot.
No, folks, just go get away with stuff. Don't do it vicariously.
Yeah.
Living is better.
Yeah. If you're in the stacks at the Cedarburg Public Library and you're looking at Kurt Vonnegut and you're thinking, is this worth my time to read? Turn your eyes 72 or 73 degrees. You will see the fire extinguisher, and reading the instructions on that will be more worth your time.
We have great extinguishers here, I must say. I mean, they are just, Steve is right. I cannot argue with that. So, well, that's our stack of 5 classics, and I think you all could pull something out of this show. And when you do, I'd like you to email me and tell me what it is.
That was the exact thing you wrote on the postcard that got you that visit from the police. You simply, I think we both know. I think we both know who's going to be making a guest appearance on next week's show. I think we both know that.
There are so many options, Steve. There are so many.
A big apology. I had no idea.
NSFW show next week, everybody.
Well, in reality, to be fair, aren't they all?
It sure seems to be not safe for general consumption.
It's not safe for family usually means their moral sensibilities, but what about their aesthetic sensibilities? We're violating those left, right, and center.
Look at this wall back here. It's so colorful.
Yeah, I've noticed the wall. Yeah.
So
it's great that you have a show you're proud of. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Well, if you would start banging away on some license plates, we could get something going back here.
You listeners out there, if you'd like to make a sign for Books of the Week.
Ooh, I like the way where you're going. That would be awesome, actually. The Cedarburg Library's address is on our website. That would be great. You heard it here first, folks. All right. Books of the Week. We'll be back next week with a show that will blow you away.
Yes. Entirely devoted to Swamp Thing.
Cannonball Run 2 may be better than Cannonball Run 1. Anyway, have a wonderful reading week, everybody. Read some classics. I think they're good for you. We'll find out. All right. Thank you, Steve. We'll see you all soon.